ban struck down. Canada's highest court ruling opens the door to doctor-assisted suicide for some terminally ill patients. Surrounded by war, with talks underway to end the fighting in eastern Ukraine, what is life like for families in the war-ravaged region? Ali and Alejandro, a couple of Hollywood's beautiful people who don't fit the mold. And Francis Movie, the story of the Pope's formative years, now filming in Argentina. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Friday, February 6th, 2015. Good evening from Washington. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick with your news now. The leaders of France and Germany are asking Russian President Vladimir Putin in person to end the fighting in eastern Ukraine. Their ceasefire proposal follows a meeting with the Ukrainian president yesterday. The fighting in eastern Ukraine between Russia-backed separatists and Ukrainian forces has intensified over the past several weeks. In response, NATO is now forming a quick reaction force of 5,000 soldiers. This morning, in a rare move, both sides briefly stopped fighting long enough to evacuate civilians from a border town. Meanwhile, the U.S. Congress is considering lethal aid to Ukraine's military, and the president as well. Justin Logan is director of the Foreign Policy Studies at Cato Institute, and there seems to be growing support for military intervention of some sort and a kind of a loosening or people are not as confident in the negotiations and the sanctions. What do you attribute this to?
Well, I think that there have been important military gains by the separatists in recent weeks that have caused particularly the Obama administration to reconsider its previous lack of desire to send military assistance to the Ukrainian army. There remain an array of important issues, including the permeation of the Ukrainian army by Russian intelligence assets and a number of other problems, but this proposal seems to be picking up steam.
So, economic pressure against Russia, how vulnerable is Russia to that at this point?
Well, it's interesting because it's hard to disaggregate. Russia has been under extreme economic duress, in large part because of falling oil prices. It's really a sort of petrostate, an economy that's almost totally reliant for government revenue on energy resources. And as world oil prices have plummeted, they've suffered a lot as a consequence of that. And there have been Western sanctions that have really squeezed Russia in addition. So people talk about needing to raise the consequences for Russia. They're suffering significant consequences now, and it doesn't appear to have slowed them down at all.
If the U.S. were to arm the Ukrainian forces, what would the result be in your mind?
What's interesting about the proposal is that everyone seems to concede that no matter what we give to the Ukrainians, the Russians could win the war. Rather, what the thinking seems to be is that Vladimir Putin in particular, and Russia more generally, is very sensitive to casualties, which has some historically dubious precedents. But the idea is basically that if you give these weapons to the Ukrainians and Russia sees the likelihood of greater casualties, they'll be more inclined to take a diplomatic deal that looks more like the ceasefire that failed that was brokered last fall. I think the problem with that argument is essentially that Vladimir Putin has been saying all along that this is about the United States. It's not Russia beating up on Ukraine. It's a Western imperial intervention onto Russia's periphery. And at the moment, the United States supplies the Ukrainian army with weapons. That narrative becomes true. It becomes proved to the Russian people that it's about the United States to some degree.
Could we see the U.S. in direct conflict with Russia?
I think as a general principle, backing a country that has thousands of nuclear weapons into a corner in a conflict that's happening on its border is a risky gambit. Do I think that we're going to get there? No, I don't. But do I think that we should keep the probability of escalation and talking about a conflict with Russia at a very minimum? I do.
So do you think we should stick with the current course of sanctions?
Well, there are a couple of different things going on here. Number one is that there's really no unity within NATO, right? The French and the Germans have absolutely no appetite and have made clear even today that they have no desire to send weaponry to the Ukrainian army. So I think that's number one, is trying to keep the coalition together, because the moment we start turning this into an American proxy war with Russia, they're going to become even more disinclined to help on the diplomatic front. And the bottom line is that, there's just an unfortunate turn of events that, Ukraine is very subject to bullying by a much larger, much more powerful country on its border. And for the United States to get involved in that, again, raises the prospect of not just tension, but conflict with a very large nuclear armed state.
Very quickly, do you think that Germany and France have a better shot at getting to Putin than we would?
I wouldn't put a lot of money on either of them.
Okay, we'll have to see. We appreciate you joining us, Justin Logan from the Cato Institute. Thanks.
My pleasure.
Well, as world leaders work to end the fighting in eastern Ukraine, thousands of villagers live in constant fear with conflict raging around them. Wyatt Goolsby is here tonight with more on the rising death toll.
Yeah, Brian, the United Nations says more than 5,300 people have been killed in the fighting since it broke out last April. But in the past 3 weeks alone, the violence has killed more than 200 civilians, making it difficult for people to live their daily lives. In the small village of Ermina in Ukraine's Luhansk region, where temperatures typically stay below freezing all winter, residents suffer daily power cuts, lack of running water, and food shortages. Critical infrastructure has been damaged in a war that has ravaged Ukraine's east. Lining up for water at a village well has become commonplace in the daily routine of the Ermina residents.
We have no jobs. We have nothing. How can we live? How?
Residents say as the shelling has been getting closer, food supplies are running low and people are running out of money.
They are shelling all the time. Today in the maternity hospital, the windows were shaking. The parents live with their babies in the basements.
In the village market, empty stalls greet those with some money left to spend. The Ukrainian government has cut off pensions to those living in rebel-controlled areas, and the social care system is breaking down.
We're helping some of them, but we can't help everyone. Me, myself, I'm one of them. I have no pension.
The school playground stands empty, with the walls of a boarding school riddled with shrapnel. Children spend time in the building's rooms considered to be safer than the classrooms.
After dinner, when we have finished the food, we spend 30 minutes sitting upstairs. Then we are coming here to sleep every night because of the shelling.
Many children are home with their families, but staff are still caring for several children with special needs and orphans. The teachers say they are not being paid and depend on local donations of food and medicine for the children. One of the scariest images is the children coloring pictures of what they see on a regular basis, guns and grenades. Some of those residents have not been paid since September. It also has been months since humanitarian convoys with aid has been able to get past blockades to reach their village. So, Brian, clearly a very devastating situation.
Wyatt Goolsby, thank you. Now, some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. Canada's highest court paves the way for doctor-assisted suicide to be legalized for some patients in that country. Jason Calvi reports.
Canada's law used to say you can't take the life of another, even with their consent. But their Supreme Court struck down that law for mentally competent patients with terminal illnesses. The court writes that allowing them the option is, quote, critical to their dignity and autonomy. Pro-life groups in Canada are slamming the unanimous decision.
It will teach generations to come that human life, the value of human life is subject to whether or not you are healthy or not healthy, and whether or not you yourself feel that your life has value.
Back in the States, Lydia Brown fears today's decision could hurt people with disabilities. The Georgetown University senior, who calls herself left-wing, works with numerous disability rights groups. She herself has autism.
We as disabled people live in a world that tells us all the time that the way that our bodies and minds work isn't valuable, that there's something inherently broken or wrong with us, and that our existence is a burden on everyone who we care about and on society at large. And in a society like that, people who might otherwise want to live are going to be coerced into choosing assisted suicide.
Brown says that coercion could come from a potential heir, family member, caregiver, or even from insurance companies.
It's not at all a stretch to imagine that people with disabilities might be denied treatments that they need or treatments that they desire.
Assisted suicide is legal in Oregon, Washington State, Vermont, New Mexico, Montana, and soon in Canada.
We are very saddened by this.
The Canadian High Court, however, says there's no evidence elderly or disabled will be abused. The court is giving the country's parliament 1 year to write a law to allow for assisted suicide. Brian, Parliament does have a way under the country's charter to get around the Supreme Court's decision, but that seems really unlikely here.
Unfortunate. Thank you, Jason. Boko Haram attacked Niger today, the second foreign country the Nigeria-based terrorist group has attacked this week. Boko Haram hit Cameroon earlier in the week, leaving nearly 100 people dead, about 500 wounded. Cameroon and Chad joined Nigeria in launching an air and ground offensive this week. Military action involving other nations is expected to increase when African Union meetings wrap up tomorrow. Cameroon's communications minister calls on the West to pay greater attention to these Boko Haram attacks.
We need the Western civilization to wake up. If they were sleeping, I am convinced that they know. But by focusing the mind only in what taking place in Iraq and Syria, and overlooking what is taking and disregarding what is looking here, we think that it is wrong.
About 10,000 people have been killed by Boko Haram terrorists last year alone. There were problems with both engines before TransAsia Flight 235 clipped a bridge and crashed into a river in Taipei this week. Taiwan's Aviation Safety Council says the stall alert on the plane sounded just 37 seconds after takeoff. Surviving a close call, a cab driver tells his company moments later what just happened. And when you look at that cab, it was amazing that he could even speak. 15 people survived the crash, but at least 35 died. Rescue workers are still trying to find 8 victims still missing. Well, the contracts for some high school teachers in the Archdiocese of San Francisco may soon include a clear reminder of why Catholic schools exist. There's already pushback from some gay rights activists as well as some parents and teachers to a proposed moral clause in the teacher's contract. It states that Catholic schools exist to affirm and proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ as held and taught by his Catholic Church. Detailed statements of Catholic teaching on sexual morality and religious practice from the Catechism are being added to high school faculty and staff handbooks. All employees of diocesan-owned high schools, including non-Catholics, will be required to adhere to church doctrine in their public and professional lives. Archbishop Salvatore Cordeleone says the additions are meant to provide clarity for teachers, not to target any for dismissal. The Archbishop of Stockholm says the church there is getting help from immigrants in facing the challenge of spreading the gospel in a deeply secular Swedish society.
The main difficulty is to transmit faith to the younger generation, because Sweden is a very secularized country. But I'm very happy that we have so many active young people, especially from the Middle East. So somehow the tragedy of those countries suffering has meant a lot for us to build up the church.
The Archbishop is a convert to Catholicism. He is in Rome for a Vatican meeting inspired by the Pope's teaching on proclaiming the gospel in the world. The Vatican is finishing renovations now on public restrooms just off St. Peter's Square to include showers and even a barber shop for the homeless. Each homeless pilgrim, as Vatican Radio calls them, will receive a hygiene kit. The kit includes a towel, soap, deodorant, toothpaste, among other things. The showers will be open every day, but Wednesday, that's when the square, of course, is packed for the Pope's general audience. Haircuts are offered 1 day a week. Pope Francis approved the renovations after learning of the need among Rome's homeless population. Coming up, the president's national prayer breakfast comments provoke offense among Christians. And a 5-story apartment building from a 3D printer? We show you China's latest feat in innovative construction. Today, the church honors St. Paul Miki and companions. The 26 martyrs of Nagasaki were Japanese Catholics and foreign missionaries who died for their faith on what's known as Martyrs' Hill. This happened in 1597. Thanks for joining us on this Friday evening, the 6th of February. I'm Brian Patrick. President Obama warns that the U.S. must resist the urge to overreach when it comes to involvement in global crises. National Security Advisor Susan Rice laid out the president's national security priorities today. The president says the U.S. will always defend its interests and uphold commitments to partners and allies, but the security strategy cautions against decisions made out of fear. It also downplays reliance on U.S. military power. The outline makes no substantial shift to U.S. foreign policy. Well, the president is facing more backlash tonight over his comments, seeming to equate Islamic terrorism with violent acts committed by Christians. Listen to what he said at Thursday's National Prayer Breakfast.
Humanity's been grappling with these questions throughout human history. And lest we get on our high horse and think this is unique to some other place, remember that during the Crusades and the Inquisition, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ.
The White House isn't commenting about the backlash, but Louisiana Republican Governor Bobby Jindal, a Catholic, joined a chorus of critics saying, "The medieval Christian threat is under control, Mr. President. Please deal with the radical Islamic threat today." Well, a Catholic bishop who has been detained in China for the past 14 years has died. The Vatican secretly appointed Cosmos Shai Zhang as bishop in the 1980s. He has been held in an undisclosed location since 2001. Now, China only allows bishops appointed by its Chinese Catholic Patriotic Association, which is not in communion with the Vatican. We don't know exactly when or how Bishop Shai died. He was 94. Meanwhile, China is experimenting with a major new innovation. Catherine Zeltner reports on a Chinese company moving into the future of home construction.
This may look like an average home, but get a little closer and you'll see the multiple layers that created this 3D printed villa. It's part of a display in eastern China showing the latest feat in innovative construction and includes this 5-story apartment building, thought to be the tallest 3D printed building in the world.
We transfer the design of the house we want to the printing machine, and then the ink is sprayed layer by layer. For this 1,100 square meter building, for instance, which has 3 floors, it took us 1 day per floor.
Record speed that's made possible by a giant 3D printing machine measuring 105 feet long and 21 feet tall. Instead of ink, the print squirts out a paste made from recycled waste materials. With larger homes like this villa costing about $161,000 to produce, many are saying it could be a game changer for the construction industry, particularly in countries like China that are facing rapid urbanization.
I think this technology is going to change the way buildings are built. It's going to be attractive to all income brackets. Lower income bracket, they'll get something that is cheap and quick, but something they can be proud of, something that looks really nice. And for like the more the upper income bracket, it's going to give you really complex and fancy looking structures that they would really like.
The development company says it already has 10 orders for the villa and 20,000 orders for smaller houses from the Egyptian government. Catherine Zeltner, EWTN News Nightly.
Up next, they certainly look the part, but this Hollywood couple puts faith and family before career. And a movie about the formative years of Pope Francis is now filming in his native Argentina. A thought-provoking tweet from Pope Francis today. Having faith does not mean having no difficulties, but having the strength to face them, knowing we are not alone. Thanks for joining us on this Friday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. Landry is a former Miss USA. She's an actress, an entrepreneur, a Catholic mom of 3. Her husband, Alejandro Monteverde, is a film director. He's the guy responsible for Bella and the soon-to-be-released World War II drama, Little Boy. It's great to have both of you with us. And Alejandro, it looks like you married up, as my friends on Crossing the Goal would say.
Yes, very blessed.
He always says that he married down because I wasn't Miss Universe.
Oh, well, you were Miss USA. You've been all over television, many commercials. How do you juggle being a good mom with all that going on?
You know, I always say that is the question. I think for all moms out there, it's like trying to find that balance. I think I try to go into every day with the best intentions, you know, to be the best mom I can be, to be the best wife I can be, to be the best friend, to do my best in my work and my business. But I feel like at the end of the day, something or someone always falls short, and that's okay. Try not to carry the guilt about that, and, you know, tomorrow's a new day.
And your Catholic faith, I know, is very important to both of you.
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep that in perspective in Hollywood?
It is the only, it is our strength, it is our foundation, it is, our faith is what keeps our marriage together. It's how we make our choices, I think, in our business, is how we make our choices of how we're going to raise our children. Without our Catholic faith, I would have to say I don't know how a marriage could really survive in the entertainment business.
Alejandro, my mom always said that it was my dad who brought her to the faith. How did that work in your marriage? Who brought who?
No, I think we met through my compadre, how we call in Mexico, Eduardo Verástegui, my business partner.
In
he
Bella.
Introduced us.
Remember him from Bella. Yeah.
Yes. So he introduced us. So we were both, you know, already practicing our faith. So.
And has your marriage strengthened that for each of you individually?
100%. 100%. You know, when you start a family, that foundation needs to be stronger. So you have to put more cement.
Yeah. We see you with your children. You include your children a lot in the things that you do, don't you?
Well, you know, we're both in the business, so it's very hard to avoid, you know. So yes, they come to the sets. They still have no idea what we do. You know, I asked our son what his dad did the other day. What did he say? He said he was a painter.
An artist.
I was like, well,
an artist,
he paints films, if that's, you know. But going back to our faith and how we met, I was auditioning for a project with Eduardo Verástegui, and I had gone through a really terrible breakup at the time, and he runs into me and he says, I'm going to a theology class, Bible study in town. Would you like to come? And at the time, I was like really searching, and I said, I would love to go. And that's actually how he and I met. And then we really, I kid you not, I say to this day, he, my husband, I prayed for him. And he did the same. We both were writing in journals at this time, and I prayed specifically what I wanted in a man because I had been so burned before. And I really think that he is my gift from God.
And
I
blessed
really,
you both,
yes.
I'm sure. You know, as a Catholic family in the Hollywood culture, do you have to give up work? What kind of sacrifices do you need to make career-wise?
I mean, I can speak for myself. After I sort of had my, not conversion, because I was always practicing, but not really. You know, I was a lukewarm Catholic for many years. But after all of this happened to me, I really took the blinders off and put all my faith in God and my trust, and really wanted him to guide my career and wanted my career to reflect my heart. And I had to turn down a lot of projects, so many different things.
But you got great opportunities too. I know that the Pope actually blessed you and your third child, didn't he?
Incredible. Only a year and a half ago, we were in Rome, and he asked to bless the baby, and it was in the Vatican paper the next day. My husband doesn't even remember him putting his hand on my belly to bless the baby, but it was a moment that I will never forget.
What an incredible story. And I know you're telling a new story in a new film called Little Boy, coming out in April. And the next time we get together, we're going to talk much more about that. Alejandro Monteverde and Ali Landry, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
What a great couple. And the first film detailing the life of Pope Francis is now in the works. Call Me Francesco, the Pope, is currently being shot in the Holy Father's native Argentina. It will cover his formative years as a Jesuit priest who went on to lead the Catholic Church in Argentina before becoming Pope. The film's cast and crew met journalists in Buenos Aires this week. Parts of the movie will also be filmed in Germany and in Italy. We appreciate you joining us tonight. Until Monday, we encourage you to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, watch again on YouTube. For all of us at EWTN News Nightly, our entire team, I'm Brian Patrick. Thanks for watching. Have a good weekend, and may God bless you.